Uh, Welcome everybody to this session on Shadow IT. So I'll start off just a quick round of introductions, so you guys can all go around the table and introduce yourself, please. So I'll start with you, Torgrim, from Cognite. Can you just give me a little bit background, who you are, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm Torgrim Aas. I'm a solution architect in Cognite. My background is from operations, control systems, mostly applied to oil and gas, but I've been working primarily with real-time data analytics, which is not tied to oil and gas specifically, but very much tied to accessing data that is hard to access. So I've kind of been playing quite a lot around in this shadow IT topic myself, kind of being, from the IT's point of view, maybe a little bit of enemy. So I'm looking forward to kind of also hear if I'm alone in this, if I have other on the panel here with me that can also share some stories.
All right, perfect. All right, Sheila, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Sheila Kester. I'm the COO of TwinThread. My whole career has been in industrial automation, starting at the process MRP level, going all the way down to the plant floor. I have been a part of shadow IT organizations. Don't tell anyone, though, because it's secret, just like you said. And what I'm doing today, so actually TwinThread to me is the culmination of everything I've ever done, because it's a full cycle industrial IoT platform. And so it's gathering data, contextualizing data, detecting anomalies, making recommendations, predicting things, and then putting them into action. And so it's kind of a funny culmination of everything that I've done. And I'm excited to be here too, to talk to everyone.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining. Manveer, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
This is Manveer. I lead the digital transformation initiatives for Kyndryl. Been in the industry for around 15 years. I started my career working in a manufacturing plant floors. So it has evolved a whole lot, but have in-depth understanding of a discrete manufacturing, working for the tier ones, shipping it to the OEMs, and the challenges that they face on a plant floors, and how the disconnect was with IT. And over the years, as I progressed into the consulting and the technology role, it has grown more significantly as we try to connect more systems. So I come from the background of leading our customers on the digital transformation journey, closing the gap on the IT and OT space to the best we can.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, awesome. All right, and John, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. Maybe just quick blurb on yourself, just to remind everybody who you are.
Thanks, Mark. John Pillar with J Pillar Design and Consulting. So I started my career 20 years ago. And I thought I was going to be electrical contractor and building buildings, and I ended up building correctional facilities and using machine controls in that space. So my shadow IT, Torgrim, started right there in the jails, right? But then did some time teaching with Purdue University and ended up doing a bunch of SaaS companies doing data collection and working with them. So that's how I'm here today.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us. So I'm super excited because this has always been one of those love-hate relationships I've navigated through my career as well, right? Where I've been on the IT side mandating corporate systems. So I've been on the shop floor creating shadow IT. So I'm really excited to hear what this team has to say. So as you all know, shadow IT kind of comes out of the need to balance autonomy and agility to individuals on the shop floor who need to do what they have to do outside of the corporate systems. The corporate systems are typically very, very rigid. They're often locked down. They don't want just anybody in there. So it kind of drives innovation really from individuals on the shop floor because they want to do their job the best they can. So it's a really cool thing. I'm interested if and Sheila, I'm going to start with you. If you could share any specific success stories where you've seen an organization like balance the two with corporate systems and like a shadow IT that's beneficial and all good.
Yeah, I can. And I want to start with a story. I'm a pretty forward. I'm going to state my case a lot. And so someone said to me a long time ago, I love this about you because I know you and I have the same goals. If we don't agree, it's because one of us has data, the other doesn't. And to me, it's just a perfect amalgamation of this. And so the company I'm going to talk about, which is a Fortune 50 CPG company, has done two things really well. Number one, they have addressed what someone in the previous call talked about, which is this convergence of OT and IT data. And in essence, said they're one thing. And the goals that are created, it's basically accepting that there are going to be things that are going to be done centrally. There are going to be things that are going to be done locally. We're going to align our goals so that then when we think about how to do this, it's not that we don't agree, that we've been given contradictory messages. It's just one of us needs to share information with the other. And someone talked about this the last time, because a centralized person with centralized functions is going to have an entirely different perspective than one who's sitting next to the plant manager every day and listening to what's going on. So that's the first thing they did well. The second thing is, in my opinion, shadow IT suffers from a branding problem. It isn't shadow IT. It's just what you said, Mark. It's innovation. That's what it is. All the best ideas will start locally. And to whoever was talking about proving data from the last time, well, let that happen. Because once you have something that works at a line or a plant, you have your business case, which you can then share with peers across the enterprise. And so that's what I think this corporation has done really, really well. Common goals and objectives, and accepting and celebrating what can be done at the local level, and then making sure, though, that what can be done at the local level eventually can scale to being applied across the enterprise.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's a good example of, again, it's collaboration and it's involving the right people, isn't it? Yeah, it's very good. And I like your analogy about the shared goals. I do agree. If we have the same goal and we disagree, there's a data issue again.
Yeah.
And then the whole theme, you've nailed the whole theme of this whole two days is having the same data with everybody can help align those goals a lot nicer. So,
Sure.
So thank you for the segue. It's good. Manveer, how about you? Any good stories about successful alignments?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Sheila summed it up pretty well. What we have seen when we deal with the customers is the three C's I go with. The shadow IT is solving the problem at the plant floor, but compliance, security, and culture. And I will start with the culture. That's where the collaboration piece that's missing. There needs to be a sense of overall collaboration of the data. That when I worked at the plant floor, it used to be that we don't want to communicate what issues we have. I need to hit my numbers. I will hit my numbers. I will deliver what needs to be delivered at the corporate level. But it's not corporate's business to see how I run my show on the plant floor. So I think the culture needs to change into a more collaborative way, that the data that's being generated on a plant floor can be leveraged at the corporate level to do further enhancements, whether it's a pod data for the product development, whether it's another component's data for the supply chain optimizations. The second aspect is the security. If I'm the plant manager, my focus of using the technology, whether it's a shadow IT, to keep my uptime and to reduce my downtime. The security aspect of the machine, it's at the back burner for me, because I have the number that I need to hit today. I need to ship it to my customers. Otherwise, I'm going to be grilled on a call tomorrow. So that's where the education and the awareness is important, that your IP, your recipe sits on the PLC. So if you don't use the technology that's incompliant at the corporate level, you are actually jeopardizing the IP for the company, which kind of trigger down to the plant anyway. The third one is, I think compliance goes along with it as well. That if I'm using the technology that at the plant level, if it's in compliant with my federal and the local laws from the privacy, if I have deployed the solution for a connected worker in the areas where my maintenance person is wearing a wearable, climbing on a windmill just to fix the wind blades. What data I should gather at the operations level, I probably will decide I can have certain metrics, but that may not be acceptable at the corporate level, or not even at the regulatory level. So I think collaboration and education is key to bridge the gap. And that's where the digital strategy comes in, that why we are gathering the data. And the digital strategy needs to go from top to bottom and bottom to top, that why we take certain actions, and that should define what data is gathered. And it needs to be, I think, even at the end user, at the assembly line operator, he should understand the reason of why. So everybody is sync and they can have a collaboration and comprehensive way to collaborate and reduce that IT/OT gap.
Yeah, very good, man. I agree. Again, it's the collaboration. Cause I think a lot of times you see a bit of competition between the IT and the OT, right? Where it's not synced up, it's not joined up, and that's going to drive. Well, I can do this myself. I don't need you, and then that's where you get the problems, I think, too. Torgrim, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I actually have a specific example as well, because shadow IT to me is more like governed versus non-governed IT. And we talk about OT and IT. Specifically, OT is when you have a valve expert in your plant who knows everything about a specific valve, and he knows that he needs access to that valve to be able to control it. But from the IT side, globally, they might have 1 million valves. So how do you aggregate information up so that the person on the site is able to watch the data that makes sense for that person on site? But you might also have a valve expert located somewhere on the earth, and that person cannot differentiate between 1 million valves, so you need to aggregate it up, and both need to have the data they need. So being able to do shadow IT on the ground makes sense, because you need to access your data. You don't like the IT solution where my specific valve become 1 in a million, but on the top side, being able to aggregate it. So that drives different shadow IT strategies, whether you are on the top or whether you are on the bottom of that kind of food chain on aggregation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like the valve example, right? Where you need to share that data out, but the local person may need something very specific that's not known at a higher level as well. Very good. John, finally, yourself, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, the goals, shared goals, that's a big deal. And everything that has been said, the one thing that I think misses and that I run into is the understanding of the hardware that we're talking about here, right? What is a PLC? It's this scary box to the IT team, right? It's this, I don't know what that is. I can't program it. Being in the OT space from, when Ethernet was starting, right? As we were starting to build our own little networks, and we were figuring out, we're building a machine network for a 192.168 little network doing its thing. I was happy with that. I knew everything I needed to do with it and in that space. I tried to keep IT out of it because they complicated my system. And I didn't have to be tied to them. I didn't have to be tied to the network. If I needed some data collection, I'd throw a RAS on there and we put a POTS line to it and we were good, right? That was safe, right? But we now have this cybersecurity problem and I have to talk to the IT team, right? So that shared understanding now, I grew up in this, I want to say suburban neighborhood of I didn't have to worry about any problems going on. And suddenly I'm tying to the big city, and the guys that are in the big city that have been dealing with that grit are hardened individuals, and I need them, right? I need them so that I can push my data to the cloud and come back down. And it's just understanding the two different worlds that kind of grew over a period of about 20 years in different sections, doing all the same pieces, but not worrying about, I don't care what a cloud server is. I don't care what a RAS is, or I don't care about those things. I care what a PLC is. I care what a VFD is. I know what a NIC card is. I can do these pieces and I make that happen. So it's a misunderstanding of the two areas, and it's that goal setting and knowing that we all want the same thing. We want to collect the data. The data is valuable. We got to move it there. And I think that's the big piece of why the shadow IT has grown and does what it does, right? So that's kind of my take on this deal.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's kind of getting your eyes open to a wider world from being in the OT space and realizing that there are risks that you may not have even thought of, and those are now being imparted back down onto you from as you said, the big city kids.
Yeah. And that fear of that processor, right? What is a PLC? That's where I'm right. I've got a group of IT right now, and they're like, I just don't know what a PLC is. I'm trying to explain to them, you're not afraid of a printer.
Yeah.
This is just a printer. I'm the expert on that. I need the network. I need the security. I need those pieces. Don't worry what the PLC is, right?
So, yeah, I agree. It's amazing. You're right that it's a simple. I won't say it's a simple box, but there's nothing overly complex about it, right? It writes instructions and it collects data and it puts them in registers. But from an IT perspective, it does seem like a magic box, and it is intimidating because it's manufacturing and it's unknown. So
yeah.
Okay. So the next question I want to ask is, so shadow IT, it's a double-edged sword, right? We've talked about the benefits, and it is innovation. Like at its core, it's getting the job done in the maybe not the most efficient way, but it's helping the plant or helping the operator or helping the controls person get their job done. So that comes with risk, though, as we talked about the security and such. So how do companies, or how has this team seen companies kind of mitigating the risk while encouraging the innovation? Because I think that's kind of the secret sauce. Sheila, I'm going to go back to you first, because I think a lot of this is shared goals again, right? But what are your thoughts on balancing that risk and making sure that they don't expose the company to outside dangers, but still allowing them the freedom of doing what they need to do?
Yeah, so I think it's the risk reward ratio that you talked about. And so in all companies that we work with now, we're subject to, for example, security reviews, data reviews, that type of thing. And the ones that do it really well, just to back up a bit, our product scales. So we can literally work with a teeny weeny bit of data or billions of data tags. And so the ones that do it well, first of all, the ones that do it well are clear to say, you will put nothing on the network until we have a look at it. And so we in central corporate IT are responsible for security. We're responsible for giving you the baseline for data privacy, which is an enormous issue for us all globally. And then we're going to give you some flexibility. So when we start a very small project, the people that do it well have a light touch. Where is it going? What is the level of impact? What will happen if? And when we've moved then to more enterprise implementations, it's heavy. The last thing I'll say is there are also standards that businesses can adopt where they make it significantly easier for anyone to know whether the solution that they're going to propose to IT will be accepted or not. Is the vendor SOC 2 certified? Where are they on the ISO bailiwick in terms of standards? And when people have done that, the OT folks calm down. It's just, you just want to know rules. Want to know the rules.
Right. So it's establishing the boundaries of what you can and can't do, saying, go do your innovation, but here's the box, right? Yeah. You're going to need single sign-on. You're going to need encryption, or whatever it's going to be. You can't just hack it together. We want some control. And I think that's a very reasonable approach, because it allows people to be free, but yet not hurt themselves or worse, the company, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent points. Manveer, anything you want to add to that from your experiences?
No, definitely. I think Sheila had a great point that it doesn't need to be yes or no. It needs to be a box where there's a safe place for IT and OT to work together. Because if the plants can vary by age, the equipment in the plants can vary by age. If there are certain standards and policies defined that's applicable for plant A, plant B probably have a legacy equipment that's long-term investment, still reaping the benefits of return on investment. So as a plant manager, I want some tool that can give me visibility that if a machine is running fine, if I'm hitting my OE numbers that is supposed to do, and I will try to use a solution. But again, the IT mandates, so you cannot use this company. You have to select from A, B, and C. But the hardware I need for this specific legacy equipment, it doesn't come in IT, and there's a no. So I think that's where, again, I will go back to the digital strategy and the collaboration, that why there's a need to enable the legacy equipment. It will help production supervisor, first operator, supervisor. It will help the plant manager. It will actually give the visibility to the materials and the quality team that, if they are expediting a shipment and the machine is down, if there's a visibility and alerts, now they can take an action. So that way, the business case is built, and then the IT and OT can work together. Okay, there's an exception to use this specific hardware that can enable that machine to cloud connectivity for the legacy equipment. From the IT, there's actually a better insight now. If there are more equipment, they can actually get a better negotiated rate to enable that technology to deploy in other facilities with the legacy equipment as well. So I think it's a collaboration at the end of the day, and getting both parties on the table and move forward with that.
Yeah, it's a common theme I keep hearing, which is good. I like that. The collaboration piece, right? You have to talk. You have to be on the same page. Again, Julius said best, shared goals, right? It's very accurate. Torgrim, anything you want to? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Benefit for all. So it needs to be explained that there's a mutual benefit for me, but there's a mutual benefit for you as well. From my team, yes, you have a visibility what I'm doing on the plant floor, and from the OT, I'm getting a better rate because now it's this specific hardware is procured at the corporate level. So I think that's what helps bridge that gap.
Yeah, very good. I agree. Torgrim, any other insights around this?
In Cognite, we are on the data consumption side, and we see often when we talk to IT that they experience shadow IT where users are trying to tie into the control system. They're trying to access the historians because they just need access to the data. But the historians might be loaded, they might not have connections, they might not have license. And you start to have those hacks where you do fancy things in Excel or VBA. You do kind of things. You just want to have your data to do your analysis. So you see the data, the shadow IT tied into I just want my data. I have no intention to break any cybersecurity rules. I didn't intend to set up this Wi-Fi node to access this data. So just being able to do this lift and shift to safely move data from the lockdown system to the open system, so that the people that can make sense of the data have access to them in the context that makes sense. So I think making things available, in Cognite we joke about we are liberating the data and silo it. I think that is kind of where you can move from the shadow side to the right side of data consumption in a governed and trusted environment, allowing those that previously were kind of hacking and trying things just to get access to the data, certainly have access to the data in a safe manner.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the controlled liberation of your data is actually spot on, because it's all there. People want it. They know what they want to do with it. They just can't get at it. So they're gonna do what they can to get at it, because there's one thing about people in manufacturing, they are super passionate about what they do, and they take great pride in improving things. Yes.
I just also want to add that we, in this kind of modern days of cloud and everything, like most sites are not in the cloud. They are still on-prem. They're still running servers that you bought 7-6 years ago, and they might even running with unsupported Microsoft server operating systems, right? So the reality is really that things are still locked in, and on the future make things easier to access. You ask some AI solution to give you the data, but right today, the data isn't easily available.
That's a good point. I'm going to touch on what you just said. I'm going to deviate a bit because I like what you said about the AI system will serve up the data. So I want to explore that in a bit. John, over to you quick. Anything you want to mention around this topic about?
I think what Manbir and Torgrim said there about making sure what we're doing on the plant level is great when it's fitting in the box of that cybersecurity, but when you can go further out and start democratizing the costs, right? So that's where that shared benefit comes in, and that's the big deal. That's where I'm pushing right now on a couple places where I'm trying to get the corporate to understand the value of if I'm buying a license and you're buying a license and you're buying a license on your plant budget, but we could pull this all together, buy that hardware together. However, I have a PC that is locked down and I need that for an HMI. You locked it down. Let's open it up there. Where I'm working with IT on setting it up as a local box as though it's a shadow IT box, but it's still their owned device. They have the capability of pulling a plug on me, right? So we've got that shared benefit and we're growing that relationship. That's the big deal of coming out of the shadows and then sharing that space. The dollars and working together in the teams, not adding to their task list. You know, the PLC scares them on their task list. It's not your task, it's mine. Here's your task that I don't want to do anymore. I don't want to build a PC up anymore. I don't want to do those things. You have those tools. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Where I've seen that go sometimes sideways is when there's competition between different plants, right? A lot of times they are competing to see who's got lower cost, more product.
Yep.
That can throw a wrench into the shareability of stuff because they want to stand on their own at times as well. So I'm going to segue into that. Like, what are your thoughts around that? Because I think that is a realistic thing that I know we run into a lot.
That's where Sheila started with the shared goals.
Yes.
Right? That's it. Yes. Right. Again, I had another client where we were globalizing a solution for putting some ML on a particular extruder machine, right? Globalizing that all across the board. But the guys in France didn't want to. You know, and so you have weekly meetings with the guys in France. All right, what are you doing? I've got the corporate asset of saying we're going to do it this way. Let's talk about what you're doing and how can I incorporate what you're at. You share that process, right? You walk it through and it's a shared goal. Eventually someone's going to have to give. I either add some of what you want to do or you're going to have to just not do that anymore because we're going this other way. I mean, it's a shared goal that you have to have as a team.
I agree. So that's a nice segue into our next piece, where in these situations where you have a concept of shared goals, and Sheila, I'm going to turn this on you. So first, when you have the concept of shared goals and you want the transparency of, you know, here's our best practice, but you can run into, I want to pick on the France plant, but another country, another region that is not interested, or even in the US or Canada, you have different divisions or different plants, different regions, not interested because the plant manager is being evaluated on their ability to produce product and they want autonomy. What kind of strategies have you seen from a cultural, more soft skill approach to that? Because this is more than technology. This is mindset, right? So how have you approached that? I'm really curious.
So my husband's in IT and he's a senior IT person and he's been working at a company for a couple of years now. And he went and saw every plant manager, went to them and had them walk the plant with him and explain their processes. And they have some ungodly number of like ERP systems, like 27 ERP systems, Oracle, which is 14 years old and is 5 years past end of life. And they told him that he was the first IT person they'd seen. And so I think a really, really, really important thing is I'm not going to argue with Torgrim if I've met him and had a beer with him. I'm just not going to, in the same way where I hang up the phone and go, what an idiot. I'm just not, it's just a completely different dynamic. And the other thing, frankly, is go and see what they're talking about. Go and understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then come back and escalate to whatever the point of convergence is to say, we've got a mismatch here. These guys are being and he was talking about this. The ERP system is way too old, and it fell apart over New Year's. So our New Year's is fabulous, where they couldn't get Oracle to support them. Okay, long story short, now we want to upgrade that ERP system. And the plant manager says, I can't do that and meet my production goals. And so then you got to surface what you've learned to the point of convergence to say, what do you want to do? Risk reward. Here's the risk for not going, right? We lost a week over Christmas, which we couldn't afford. You're going to lose the revenue anyway if you don't do it this way. But because my husband can't do anything, the plant manager can't do anything. But the fact that my husband went out and actually saw all these folks is how he understood what was wrong. People don't set out, I firmly believe this, to disagree or break rules. They don't. But they have to pay a mortgage, and they're gold on something that helps them pay that mortgage. And that's what they're going to do. So
I agree 100%. Do you think that I like your husband's story about going to every plant. Do you think that helped build trust as well, because he actually took the time to go out and see what was going on rather than assuming what he knew?
Totally, because then they call him now to say, because they know they're going to get heard, and he's gone back. He can't go back to all of them because it's a global company, but he tries to get to them whenever he can. It was incredibly well worth his time.
Yeah, making the effort is important. Torgrim, which you have your hand up.
Yeah, I could add a different version of the same story in a way, because I think the part of the challenge comes in when you have the local versus global, or like Norway versus the US, where the head office is in the US and you have a plant in Norway where the head office, which typically is associated with IT, have this ambition of creating global ISO models for equipment that doesn't fit anything that you see on the plant. So you have justified good intentions on the top, but at the plant level, they still need to execute. And I think often I see in the industry, there's a lack of understanding of what is required now, what is required in the future state, and somehow you need to be able to do both at the same time.
Right. That's a good point. I think it is good intentions, but not relevant at times, right? With where they are meant to go.
For different timelines, right? You do want to have a global data model, but you can't wait 2 years to complete it. You need to allow to operate on the plant level in the meantime. Yes. So somehow it's more about data management and collaboration. That's the key word again, right?
Collaboration, share goals. Yeah, that's the theme that's coming through here. Even though this is a shadow IT discussion, it's collaboration, shared goals, and it's more people than technology, isn't it? At the end of the day. So, Manbir, anything you want to add to this?
Torgrim, you shared a great example. And, generally, if the solution's procured at the corporate level, and in some instances, just push to all the plans. Okay, it's a mandate. Is we're going to take X amount of dollars from your P&L without understanding that plant A age cycle is different from plant B. Plant B probably be coming to a platform overhaul in 2 years. So there's even no point in doing upgrading for the 2 years if you're going to start building a new product. So understanding the challenge and then working together. I think we all go back to the collaboration. Finding what's the reason, then the risk and reward, right? Okay, we probably will not have the level of security we need to have in this plant, but what is the benefit if we delay for two years, or if we can procure a sub security solution that's just for this plant. That's an exception made, again based on the understanding of what the company's overall digital strategy is and what are the risks and rewards on that. I think. At the end of the day, it's a communication that never happened. The culture was there that OT is mine and I don't want to tell. I'll just run my show. And IT is like, oh, we are the corporate. We define the rules. So I think that's and it becomes more and more. To John's point, 20 years back, it ran disconnected, isolated, so it was fine. But now, as the equipment gets connected and everything is available, that can jeopardize basically companies' operations if somebody hacks and shut down the equipment. So it's more important than ever to have the collaboration talks at the high level, and it needs to be ingrained in the company's DNA actually, that we are not separate, we are together. At the end of the day, we work together to produce a component, to Sheila's point, that gives us a paycheck and that we pay our mortgage. So we are not separate, we're just together.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the risk reward thing. I don't think that gets talked enough, because what can you risk, right? What is worth the risk versus what the reward is, and maybe it's that reward isn't just monetary. It's bringing that rogue plant into the bigger picture, right? To make a concession, and then that again gets them back into the swing of things. Very good. John, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I've got a plant right now. So kind of the reverse of Sheila's husband. I'm at the plant and no one was talking to IT. And okay. and I was like that, things are failing here. This isn't working. And I made lots of noise, got all the way up to the CTO, got down and found a project manager that's there. And now I have a weekly call with that project manager working with the networking team, the cybersecurity team. Yesterday, I had a call from cybersecurity saying, hey, we're going to start building rules now. I'm going to leave it open. We're going to do these things because we don't know who the people are. And I was like, no, I already know who the people are. Let me do that, right? So I had that conversation back and forth, and I had to go the other way. The network switches were just loops and fails and everything because the other OT guys were doing what they wanted to do with them, making it work. Couple months ago, network came and we revamped all the switches. We took the plant down for the weekend and spent the time. I was there side by side with those guys. They were here. I was there. Now I've got their personal phone number, right? And they've got mine, and we know each other, right? Yeah, that's the big deal, is getting that knowledge. And I picked on the French guys, but we talked with them every day. I didn't go to France, right? But the beauty of what we're doing right now, I can have a call. I might have to wake up at 2:30 in the morning to have that call with them. I might need to back and forth, but you have that conversation. And even if you're not physically with them to have the beer, you can at least have an eye-to-eye look. And this is a big deal. And I think lots of growth is happening from this. So that's cool.
Yes, I think you've touched on one of the core elements that I found in manufacturing is that it's a team, and it's a pretty tight team at a plant. And when there's a fire, people at the plant run to the fire; they don't run away from it. And I think what you're talking about is the same thing. You ran to the fire and engaged, and as soon as you do that, I find in manufacturing, you become part of that team because you are engaged. You care enough to get on a call at 2:30 in the morning and participate in what's going on, right? Like Sheila's husband cared enough to go to every plant, walk the floor, and ask the questions so that he shows he cares what's going on. And I think that's an element that, as we go through this whole data thing and engaging people, it's also on us as contractors and suppliers to engage and care with the people that we're affecting, right? Because they have mortgages to pay, and that's probably a lot of the things that drive I don't want to do this because it's different. How can I trust you? I don't even know who this person is who's trying to tell me what to do, right? So yeah, great stories from each of you. Yeah, Torgrim.
I also want to add that coming in as kind of trusted vendors or contractors, we also carry responsibility because, John, since you're mentioning PLCs, I'm just assuming here, but if you are on site and you have the Siemens box and you know that you can access the Linux kernel and do a few hacks and you can make your client happy, you also carry responsibility because you don't scale. You can't just stay there forever. We as the vendors also carry responsibility to guide the client and suggest governance, although we know we can bypass it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. With power comes great responsibility, right? So you have to temper your enthusiasm and do what's right. I like that too. Okay, we're coming up to the end. I've got one more question. We kind of touched on it. I think, Torgrim, you mentioned this before, but I want to explore it a bit more. So I think you mentioned about, in the future, we'll be sending data to the cloud, and then you could just subscribe to some machine learning algorithm or whatever, and it would feed you the data. Well, that's a great example of a possible future technology that could potentially eliminate even the need for shadow IT, because all the data goes to the cloud, and then you subscribe to what you want, so you don't have to dabble in the occult on the shop floor. Does this team see any more ideas or emerging technologies that can kind of balance that whole ecosystem of what I need personally versus what the corporation wants you to have securely? And John, I'll start with you.
I'm going to reference what I said yesterday on the democratizing of data, and I know we need to network everything, because we all know that there's PLCs out there that are older than I am, right? So, and they're doing their job, but we have to get them on the network. So you have to network them.
Yep.
And whatever we have to do that, then collect that data and then move it to that cloud where you're talking. Just make that possible. That democratizes the data. So I'm not sure what we're going to do and all the holes that we're going to get to that, but this was that 2060 conversation that I said yesterday. Studebaker made it to 1960. They figured out what it took to get there. I can tell you that if you don't do networking, collecting of the data and storing of the data, and you're not going to make it to 2060. But I guess that I'm not sure what to go past that. So that's kind of my spot there.
Yeah, fair enough. Sheila?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that are coming, like the computer processing power is going to take another quantum leap forward in terms of the ability to process tetrabytes or huge amounts of data. And tied to that, I believe, I could be wrong about this, that cloud storage costs are going to go down just as more and more vendors participate in this area. And so it's going to come to what I think Torgrim said early on, which is we'll leave the data where it is, and we'll pull up what others need to some other cloud data storage place, and then make sure they stay synced, right? Because they're going to have to as you move forward, but safely, and have that be what is then used. And I'm sure we're going to talk about this more. I'm going to be in the next session as well, to make the right data available to the right people at the right time with the right granularity. Because we all know in manufacturing, we deal with more data than anybody at the most granular time slices. PLCs, when I moved from MRP, ERP down to SCADA, I was like, oh my God, like it's the time slice goes from a shift to like a sub-second. Holy crap, it's a really big difference. But with reduced data storage costs and increased computing costs, that becomes less of an issue. Just you make a copy of it and you put it over here where people can work with it. Yeah,
very good. That's a good point. As the costs come down, the value of the data goes up too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's more accessible. Manbir, you were nodding your head the whole time. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think the team have brought a great point that with the technology leap, it becomes more easier than ever to solve issues with the different personas. But I will just say that the human touch for the adoption will always be there. The end user for that data. If I'm the plant operator and I'm working on a line and you put a visual inspection solution, I come tomorrow, I see a screen without even talking to me, I'm going to seize a threat. It's there to replace me. Yes. But if we just do the same thing, just go on a plant floor as John and Sheila talk about, and talk to the personnel that we have, that quality issues we are getting, we have so much of a warranty claims. What you think can be an issue? They will provide you the best insight. They're spending 8 hours over there. Or when the color changes, I'm focusing on this, so I lose track. How about if we put a screen in here? And they will have an idea. How about it shows me red and green colors when the part comes in? Now they feel the ownership. And that's where they will say, okay, this is there to assist me, not to replace me. So
great point.
We can gather data, but having the end user touch is very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've seen that theme throughout this discussion too. It's really people that tie it all together, and how well they interact with other people is super, super important. All right, Torgrim, do you want to bring it home for us on this topic? Any thoughts?
Yeah, there's a quote that might not be a quote from Ford about if you ask people what they want faster horses. And I think that's where we are now with the data. And Sheila is right about, yes, processing price will go down, it will be more data. But really, if you ask a data scientist what that person wants, he or she will likely say, I just want access to my data, and we can obviously help with that. But the problem is more like, how does the car look like? What you are trying to achieve? Could the entire job you're doing be done in a different way? Because we don't need to get the answer your function. What is that answer going to be used for? So taking it kind of one step further, and as we get more data available, that's been kind of liberated, contextualized, it enables new insight and new way of automating it. Where we, a few years from now, we're going to look back to this discussion and say, hey, this isn't a problem anymore. This is now solved. Now we have the next level of challenges we're working on.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you think those next level challenges will be once we solve this one?
I think we're focusing so much now on making data available, and that is a big challenge by itself. But in the end, I want to optimize my maintenance plan. I want to optimize my production. But today I'm limited to that. The maintenance of this rotating machinery is a function of how much it vibrates. But this vibration is so much high frequency data. Locked down is this database that is not available because my control system can only deal with discrete I/O. So we're still on that level. But as soon as you can correlate maintenance work orders with vibration data in the same view, in the same pane of glass, suddenly you can drive new insight in, and suddenly you can shortcut that to your planning tool, and it can generate a plan for you automatically, rather than have 10 people in the loop that are picking up the data, making it available, churn it in Excel. Like, there's so many steps that each have their problems that we're dealing with right now. But when you have all that easily available, suddenly one person can do it, and if one person can do it, you can ask ChatGPT to do it for you.
Right. So it's really the streamlining of that data, and then it's end state, so it's usable out of the box. You don't have to do any cleansing on the way, basically. All right. Good. Okay. Well, we're almost at the end of our session. I think, are there any final thoughts from any one of you? You guys have all been great. Thank you so much. Great stories from each of you. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap this one up?
I will say one last thing.
Sure.
To Thomas and Sheila's point, just because data is getting cheaper, it shouldn't be since I can do it, I should do it. It should tie to a business problem, what I'm trying to solve. And that will generally provide a little different insights. That do I process some data at the edge and consume it, or what should I do with it? So always have the problem hat when thinking about how we're going to leverage the data. And not just start building the data warehouse and then think about, okay, what I'm going to do with it. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. So I've been notified we got a couple more minutes, so I'm gonna keep you guys just a little bit longer. So I'm gonna wind up with this question about what steps do you think from our side of the house to work with manufacturers, what steps can we take to help prepare for all these changes that we've been talking about, right? With the culture changes, with the collection of data, with the reduction of shadow IT, or at least the enablement and the security. What are the next steps that we can take to help manufacturers go down that path? Manbir, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we covered it at a high level. The starting point shouldn't be that I'm going to do POC just as a testing ground, do what works. As a manufacturer, as a company, a clear digital strategy needs to be there. That why are we collecting, how we consume data and what we do with the data. And it needs to be communicated all the way to the plant floors, all the way to the plant operator, that why we do what we do. Then the assessment needs to be done at a corporate level, that where does my plant A stand versus plant B stands on maturity. And at the plant level, what the commitment is at what level. Now I can start executing on the POCs that are in line with my strategy and make certain risk-reward decisions. That if I'm going to overhaul plant B in 6 months, is it worth implementing the policy, or should I make an exception to a specific policy? Fourth is be agile and pivot as the industry changes. And fifth is consider your digital transformation as a journey. It's a journey. When you even consume a data and achieve a goal, it's not an end state. We are continuously evolving, and it needs to be considered as a journey. There's always a room to improve, and there are at certain times we come in where there's a leap, but at the end of the day, it's a journey. How we can improve every day.
Yeah, that's a good point. The journey part and being able to fail and pivot, right? Learn from what you get wrong fast, and then kind of go the right way after that, for sure. Sheila, anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my recommendation would be understand what you have now. So because people don't have all the data they think they have, or at least in my experience, that's what you find out. And so the sooner you understand what you have, what granularity you have it in, how old it is, and where it conflicts with other sources of data that might need to be contextualized or collaborated, you should get going on that. And the second thing is, what I would do from a soft skills perspective is, I think the concept of AI scares people. And it really is to say, all AI is doing is looking at data and drawing inference from it and learning from it. And that's why you see the problems that you do with AI, but it's nothing more or less than that at the end of the day. So it's just getting people not to think your jobs are going to be taken over by a robot or some sort of bot that sits out there. This is a way of looking at our data to tell us things that we can't see with our own eyes. That's all it is. And then the last piece of advice I would give is, everyone is burdened by their own experience. Let the data take you where it will, because it may take you somewhere that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, so trust the data, not your assumptions. That's what you're saying, really. Yeah. It's great point. John, anything you want to add?
I like that trust the data part. That's
sure.
We're going to see lots of pieces that don't make sense, right? And I think we talked about this yesterday too. Of I've always done it this way. It's always worked. Of course, we're efficient because this is the way it is. And then you're going to have that along the way. So making sure that you trust the data, bring everybody along on the ride. We're all part of the team. So it's all that culture that we talked about too. And Manveer, you did say the one thing about don't just collect data to collect data, but I think we're early enough. My opinion is I think we're early enough in this process with AI capability that I don't know what not to collect. So I'm actually more on the line of I'm going to collect all of it right now and store it so that I see that picture so I can trust it. I don't want to use my gut to measure that and not that. I want to start measuring what I have and then start saying, do I have to measure that anymore? And I'm missing a piece that I'm not measuring. So right now I'm more on the line of know your process, automate your process, collect your data, and then control from there. And that's my steps that nice. I do. Yeah.
Nice. Very good. And Torgrim, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I echo all of what was said. Starting a little bit with what Manveer said in the beginning about the digital transformation, I think some companies misunderstand digital transformation with just making it up in the cloud. But that part is just a networking that John referred to as kind of the first step. You need to network the data. You need to make it available. And just over the few years, storage is now cheap, as Sheila pointed out. A few years ago, storage was not cheap. Now it is cheap. So I also echo what John said about just making it available. And just a half year we see with all the AI stuff, how quickly it's learning and doing things. I don't say I can make more sense of the data that I don't know anything about, but the AI can for sure. So we shouldn't underestimate the power it has to contextualize and make things available for me. However, to be able to control, you need to observe. So there may be a lineage from the data you are seeing down to where it's coming from. So knowing which sensor it is coming from, understanding the context is super crucial in the time ahead when we just use this AI to automate a lot of things.
Perfect. That was well put. And you did a great segue for our next session, which is contextualization it matters, and why does that matter so much? So our next panel will be diving into that and really understanding, how the context matters and discussing like ways to get that and the benefits and the pitfalls of not having the context when you need it. And I think when you get into the machine learning pieces, it becomes super, super important. So I see Chris, you've joined us. Welcome back. And then just waiting for our other participants, I think, to join.
Sounds good. Excited to be here for day 2, and I think a very appropriate conversation around context as we wrap up the Do More with Data Summit.
Perfect.
And it looks like everyone's rolling in. So I'm sure some people are going to be jumping on right at the top of the hour. So I'll jump in with a little bit of a story and a little bit of background as we get into the conversation around contextualization around data. I mean, I think of context often as a podcaster and a communicator, and the way we communicate and the way language is used in terms of how we interpret a situation when we're hearing it via email or when we're hearing it in person, and we have different cues that we can read. And I think there's something to be said about understanding the context of the data you're getting as well. We've talked about what I've heard for the past couple of days around not getting data for data's sake, but making sure there's context there. So I look forward to jumping into this conversation with our team. Before we get there, Dave and Mark, as the master of ceremonies, do you have anything you want to say before we jump into this next session?
I'm excited to hear it. We've got a great panel again. So this should be really exciting to hear the different perspectives on this and see where it goes.
Excellent. Well, I'll do a quick intro on myself then, and then we'll get the panel going right after that. So my name's Chris Lukey. Some of you might have seen me yesterday around this time. I'm the host of the podcast Manufacturing Happy Hour, which is a show where we discuss the latest trends and technologies in manufacturing in a candid fashion, the way you'd talk about it over a drink with someone. And I think we want to get to some of that vibe today in this final conversation around contextualization with data. And I couldn't be more excited for the panel that we have lined up for this discussion. So